Judges cry uncontrollably at boy's version of Hotel California. The hall was silent, too silent. Thousands of eyes fixed on the stage, where a thin boy stood nervously clutching a second-hand guitar that looked far too big for his fragile frame. His hands trembled as he adjusted the strap, and for a brief second, it seemed he might drop the instrument. But when he finally looked up, his gaze was steady, and the audience noticed something unusual, something deeper than nerves. It was pain. It was loss. It was the weight of a story waiting to be told, not with words, but with music. The judges leaned forward, their faces already softened with curiosity. They had seen countless performers walk onto that stage, some with arrogance, some with overconfidence, and others who crumbled under the spotlight. But this boy was different. He carried no swagger, no pretense. Only honesty, the kind of honesty that cuts through the soul like a sharp blade. When the first chord of Hotel California rang out, the sound wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect, yet it was real, raw, a trembling sound that echoed the story of a child who had known hardship far too early in life. And as the melody unfolded, the audience could already feel it. This wasn't just another performance. This was going to break hearts. The boy's name was Elias, a 15-year-old from a small town that barely appeared on the map. His family had struggled all their lives. His father had been a fisherman, but after an accident at sea, he was left bedridden. His mother worked tirelessly in a factory, sometimes pulling double shifts just to keep food on the table. And Elias, though still a child, bore the silent responsibility of being the man of the house. Music wasn't just his hobby. It was his lifeline. Elias had discovered Hotel California one late night while scrolling through old recordings on a borrowed phone. The haunting melody gripped him, the lyrics wrapping around his soul like vines. He didn't fully understand it at first, but he felt it. The song spoke of being trapped, of searching for something more, of illusions and dreams that never truly arrived. And in those words, Elias saw his own life, his family's struggles, his father's silent suffering, his mother's exhaustion, and his own yearning for freedom. He practiced endlessly on that worn-out guitar, teaching himself each chord, even when the strings cut into his fingers. Many nights, he played quietly beside his father's bed, the music carrying both of them away from the heaviness of reality. His father would smile faintly and whisper, "Son, one day the world will hear you." Elias never believed him, not until the day he auditioned for the show. Standing on that stage now, Elias sang not just with his voice but with his entire being. His words cracked at moments, but those cracks weren't weaknesses, they were wounds, open for everyone to see. And the judges, hardened professionals who had built walls after years of performances, found those walls crumbling. One judge, a stern woman known for her brutal critiques, felt her throat tighten as Elias reached the chorus. The pain in his voice mirrored something she had buried long ago, the loss of her own brother when she was young. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. Another judge, a man known for his humor and wit, leaned back in his chair, his hand covering his mouth. He thought of his own son, who had once dreamed of being a musician but gave it up when life became too harsh. Elias's voice pulled him back to that memory, breaking him from within. The audience, too, was spellbound. Mothers clutched their children, fathers stared silently, reflecting on their own hardships. Teenagers who usually scrolled through their phones during ballads found themselves frozen, listening to every word. And then it happened. The first tear fell from a judge's face. Then another, and soon, the panel of professionals, so often cold and distant, were openly weeping. Elias sang like his life depended on it, because, in many ways, it did. This stage was more than a competition. It was his chance to change everything for his family. His chance to prove that pain could be transformed into beauty. His chance to keep his father's faith alive. But it hadn't been easy to get here. Elias almost didn't audition at all. Weeks before, his father had fallen gravely ill, and his mother begged him to stay home. "We need you here, Elias," she had said, her voice breaking. Elias wanted to obey, but something inside told him this was the moment he had been waiting for. His father, lying weak in bed, had placed a trembling hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Go. Sing for me. Sing for us." That memory pushed Elias through every nerve, every fear, every self-doubt. He wasn't just singing for himself. He was singing for his father, his mother, his entire family. And as the final notes of Hotel California echoed through the hall, silence followed, a silence so heavy it felt sacred. Then, like a wave crashing onshore, the audience erupted. People stood, clapping, shouting, crying. The judges rose from their seats, their eyes red and swollen, their cheeks wet with tears. For a long time, they couldn't even speak. The boy on stage, exhausted but glowing, simply stood there, clutching his guitar like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Finally, the head judge managed to find words, though her voice shook. "Elias," she said, "in all my years, I have never felt a performance like that. You didn't just sing a song. You told your story. And you told ours. Tonight, you gave us your heart, and we will never forget it." The crowd roared again, and Elias's eyes brimmed with tears. He thought of his father, who was likely watching from his hospital bed. He thought of his mother, still in her factory uniform, who had scraped together bus fare for him to travel here. He thought of every late night practicing until his fingers bled. And at that moment, he knew it was worth it. Backstage, when the cameras followed him, Elias broke down in his mother's arms. She had surprised him by coming, leaving her shift early. "I'm proud of you, my son," she whispered, her tears soaking his shirt. "You did it. Your father will be so proud." And indeed, when Elias returned home later that night, his father, frail but smiling, said, "I told you the world would hear you." That performance changed everything. Videos of his audition spread like wildfire across the internet. Millions watched and shared, calling it the most heartfelt rendition of Hotel California they had ever seen. Opportunities came, record deals, invitations, interviews. But Elias never let it get to his head. He remembered why he had started: to heal, to bring hope, to honor his family. The journey wasn't without challenges. Fame brought pressure, critics, and temptation. But every time Elias felt lost, he returned to that one truth, that music was never about perfection. It was about connection, about telling stories that reminded people they weren't alone. Years later, Elias would stand on stages across the world, singing not just Hotel California, but songs of his own. And everywhere he went, people cried, not because of his voice alone, but because of the heart behind it. He had transformed pain into beauty, struggle into strength, and a simple boy's dream into a legacy that touched millions. The lesson was clear: sometimes the world doesn't need another polished star. Sometimes, it needs a boy with a broken guitar, a trembling voice, and a story that refuses to be silenced. Answer: the night the judges cried uncontrollably wasn't just about a performance. It was about the reminder that music, real music, can heal, unite, and change lives forever.